We will do the icebreaker just because I wasn't going to do it if it was just me, Andy, and Tim. But now there's a few more. We'll do the icebreaker. Just very quickly, name, pronoun, where you're from, and the question for today is: is AI or machine learning going to save us? I like the way I just keep doing that, going to save us, because everyone is talking about public transport in a way of, oh, all it needs is this modern technology, and I'm like, I don't think that's what this needs, and I can't say what I think it needs right now because it's on a recording. So hey, I'm Dr. J. Use they as a pronoun. Service designer, business analysty, hand wavy, crazy type, who's trying to make NaPTAN, well, data set a little bit more solid and stable and continue building it up. And will AI machine learning going to save us? It's got some interesting potentials, but I don't think it is the magic wand that will suddenly make everything work. But I think it's got some really interesting potentials. I've seen some nice proof of concepts from our team in Europe on how to change schedules, how to do scheduling around electrified buses. So if anyone wants to come and chat about that, we've got some really cool proof of concepts and that we've done around that with a couple of people. We're just going to go down the list from the top. And Tim, for once, you're not going to be last. So we'll start off with Andy.
Hi, I'm Andy Hole. I am he, him. I am from National PCI. And AI, well, I think we've got lessons to be learnt from things like Terminator and a few other films, so I don't think it will.
I love that you went there. Kyle, you're the next willing victim.
Kyle Wright, South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority. I want to say PTE then. Use pronouns he, him, and will AI help us? Probably not if humans are making it. There's still human error in building AI, I would presume, at some point. Until it's building itself, and then that's when it'll probably wipe us out. So
we're too inefficient. Tim.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Tim Rivet, he, him, from Artig and advisor to DFT, I guess today, and I don't think there's very much AI actually going on. Most of it is machine learning, and I think it's got a way to go, but we could make an awful lot more use of it for positive means.
And Tom, I love the range. We're terrified. We're worried that humans are going to mess it up. And Tim is like, oh no, I'm wonderfully positive about it. Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom Corcoran. He, him. I work with Kyle, SYMCA, in the same team as Kyle. I mean, that AI, I think it's really interesting. Ultimately, I think we need to embrace it as a tool, really, and just accept that it's going to encroach into all parts of our lives, or it already is, really. But as I say, it's going to be a really useful tool. So ultimately, we just need to embrace it, really, and try and work out how we can harness it to the best ability.
Excellent. I'm loving the split of ideas, and one of the things I might do at some point is in one of these I've got a couple of people who've been working on some various AI learnings and stuff, and maybe get somebody to come in and show off some of the ideas and see where we could go. But the plan for today, I'll very quickly go through previous meetings and sign up for more because you've all been here. The previously on is going to be super quick. The thing that I wanted to focus on, because people are asking me to put things into NaPTAN, but we're having discussions as to whether it's a tram, a train, a metro, a light rail, or something else. So I'm needing to try to understand what those mean in everyone's minds so that we make things correct. And then there's a couple more. There's taxis and shared taxis that we need to have a look at. And telecabines, what are they? And then next meeting is very much an open book because there's nothing that I've got burning on my plate. And I thought I'll take all the little bits and pieces that everyone's been requesting that we have a discussion on and kind of put them together and figure out a kind of some nice mishmashes of 2 or 3 smaller topics. And then the one after that will be a wrap up of the year in NaPTAN. So yeah, YouTube channel, Eventbrite, and signing up for the newsletter because you're all across all of those. We've got 2 meetings coming up, one in October, the October sessions will take requests. November, we're going to do a wrap up in the year of NaPTAN, and I might get the team to come and talk about some of the deliveries that we've made, some of the highlights that we've got. We'll talk about how stable, what stability we've managed to achieve, and some of the things that we could do around that. And then we're not going to do anything in December because I realized it was probably going to happen either it was either in Twixmas week or the week before Christmas. And I figured none of yous would want to do 2 hours on NaPTAN just before Christmas, no matter how much Christmas hats and jumpers I put on. So previously on NaPTAN, the managed removal service, we're currently working on this. We've done 1 stop through the private beta, which was me. I am patient 0. We're currently creating a bulk remover. I was going to say pretty much everyone on this call is part of the private beta users. We're currently working on the bulk remover. So we want to remove and get rid of all of those backlogs that everyone's got of stops that should have been removed in 2005. We've been finding them within the 900 set. I've been going through and cleaning that out. We've got some ferry stops that were the ferry landing was destroyed in 2007, but the stop still exists in NaPTAN because it never got picked up by the stored procedures properly. So this is one of the things of we're going through and just finding all of those, even within the 900 stops, is quite a mission. So I'm feeling your pain when I'm asking you to go and find them in your stops. Once we've got a bulk remover, we'll be able to start bringing people on one by one. And we've got a bit of an order. Andy's up with Oxfordshire as the first one, and then we're moving down to, I think, Kyle, we've got you in a second, but I've seen an email from you and I've got to try to catch up enough on the other stuff that I'm doing on one of the jobs to reply to that and catch up with that. On street versus schema, there's still... Talking with Catherine, the SRO on this, there's a lot of places where the street and the schema don't quite match. We're seeing people are adapting things to make things work. There's definitely some wider problems as well, which we're highlighting a little bit with what's a rail, what's a station, what's a train. There's some things that should be in there that aren't. There's some things that maybe shouldn't be in there that are. So we're just trying to figure that out and also figure out how we can use the schema now to take people through. And I am not sharing my screen, which I need to do because otherwise I have trouble with the recording, because I have to then go and figure out what I looked at and map up a video, which is really hard. Precisely and accurately, mapping is going to drive us all insane. We are working with just Geographical Information Service, who are trying to help us we're talking to them about the mapping problems. In the meantime, we're recommending, you've got eastings, northings, use the Ordnance Survey conversion to get your latitude, longitude. It's going to give you the best accuracy and the best alignment of the 2 measurements. We're looking at how we can get all of those measurements together and plot them so you can see when things are going slightly out, and even more so when your bus operators in TransExchange are slightly moving a stop, because that also appears to be happening. And whether they're doing it deliberately or it's happening through their software, these are all the little bits and pieces we're trying to find out and clear up. Yes, and I know that they shouldn't be moving them, Tim. Some of them are, and I think it's coming from their software is doing translations and mistranslations.
Yeah, I was about gonna need a chat with Andy. I think is probably the biggest Ments user. TransLink in Northern Ireland have got significant problems, but I think that's because they're an edge case on the edge of the calculations. Because Ments doesn't store it as that long, or Eastings, Northings, they have their own thing going on in the background.
Well, it is sort of based on Easting and Northing. Actually, there is something on that. I've just asked Ments to change our Trans Exchange export for the BOD system, so it does both. It does the translate one, so it does Easting, Northing, and Lat Long. And they've realised that all the Lat Longs have moved a metre one way, and then, left and right, or sorry, north and east. So that may be the issue that you're seeing. So it's actually it's improved their translations, we think, and I'm getting the update next month.
Right.
So we'll see.
It's a bit further in Northern Ireland because of the way the calculations work.
Yeah.
And OS go, well, that's right on the boundary, and why aren't they using the Irish grid? Because they're still part of the union for now.
Yeah.
We're just saying, if you can use the Ordnance Survey tool, one of the things that we're doing with at DFT, and I know this has been going on for a while, and there's a lot of moving parts to try to get this mapping and this piece together, because it's trying to find a good mapping solution. One of the things is to get a good mapping solution that allows us to map accurately Eastings, Northings, and Lat Longs in a way that everyone can see to the precision that we need, and so that people can also pick up readings. I am testing everyone's patience with this. Coaches, we understand what a coach is. Oh, Tom, did you have something there? I saw you popped off mute. No,
sorry.
It's okay. On a small group like this, I will be like, we understand what the difference between a coach is. Now, there's coach references in 900. They were the 900 national coach stops. They're no longer required. You can withdraw this data from NaPTAN. So if you've got it in, you can take it out. We're not going to say to anyone you need to have it in or anything like that. We do have a backup if anyone ever needs it, but nobody's in the past 3 years. Since we didn't republish it, nobody's come and screamed about it, and we've talked about it a few times, and nobody's used it. It's not been updated since 2013. They're out of sync, out of time. So just quietly take them off your system when you're editing a stop that's got them in. Roadmap, yes, we're trying to figure it out. We're looking at mapping solutions. The ATCO code and NaPTAN codes all have insane and crazy ways of doing this. That's all that I will say. There are more potential ways of creating a NaPTAN code and an ATCO code and a NaPTAN code than there are LAs. So as we can tell, apart from the ones run by Andy and Tansy, who do them kind of mostly the same, and some of Andy's are a little bit different because he's inherited them, you all seem to do something slightly different. You've all got your own local variants. I've had to do a spreadsheet for one local transport authority to pull apart how its NaPTAN codes were created and show them how to build some extra ones. If anyone needs that, message the NaPTAN team and we'll put it in my very long backlog. But actually doing that was really good because it enabled me to really pull apart how these particular local authorities had been building their NaPTAN codes and what some of the weird little edge cases that they were playing with were. Data retention, we're deploying this in the coming months. We'll keep you updated. There should be no impact to you. This is very much about us storing only specific amounts of data, and we can give you a CO2 impact statement or something like that about how much we've saved when we get to it. Very quickly, before we move on to talk about not bus stops, we'll talk about bus stops. how have we defined a bus stop? So over the last couple of years, I believe I started off, Tim will remember, the first one that I ran on my own was basically what is a bus stop, and we spent many hours discussing what is a bus stop until we arrived at the definition: a bus stop is where the bus stops. Which sounds very reductive, but it covers your hail and rides, it covers your customs, it covers your flex zones, and it covers your marked stops and your fixed stops. We describe, and this is Beryl, who's our traveller that we always talk about. A fixed stop is measured as a 1 by 1 metre square centred on where the passenger needs to stand to get on the bus. In most cases, this is next to the flag. So it doesn't matter if your stuff currently measures the flag or where the person needs to stand, that's fine. However, when those two things are going to be different, put it where the person needs to stand. And this means that things like your tail stops, where the flag is at the wrong end of the bay or the cage, or the flag is opposite across the road, it's where that passenger needs to stop to catch the bus at that particular stop. That just means that all of the route planners and apps that people use are then able to go, this is where you need to go and stand. Even if it looks like a patch of ground and it's not got a flag beside it, that's where the bus will be stopping. And that's just trying to just make it a little bit more understandable for the passengers. Talking about easting, northings, and everything has a code. We will eventually tackle indicators again, because there's 12,000 of them. I can't believe you've managed to create a field that should only have maybe 120 and get 12,000. That is one of the data cleanup pieces that I will be tackling once we've got the ability to remove stops, so you're not having to tackle old and dead stops. People use ACCO codes, which were represented here with the 3 9s, and NaPTAN codes, and either of those codes run people's QR codes. What we've found is we haven't found anyone who uses anything else to run their QR codes. If you do, let us know, because that will be a third unique identifier, and it's just making sure that we understand how those work in people's systems. So taking a deep breath and moving our minds away from buses. I know they're 95 to 97% of our lives, but there's other stuff that we need to talk about. So we have a couple of things that sound the same, and are they the same? So there's a tram, now I've got them here as a metro/tram, even though they are slightly different. So a metro/tram is a metro line that can be boarded by any member of the public with a valid ticket. It is not on, and I've called it Great British Rail because I was talking with GBRTT, National Rail, Great British Rail, just assume I'm using those words interchangeably. It is not on the Great British Rail network, e.g. Newcastle Metro and Croydon Trams. Does that make sense to anyone? And does anyone on this call have trams, metros, trains, and things like that? Kyle?
Yeah, we have trams, yeah.
Excellent. It's good to know, because we're going to get on to that in a second. Then there's light rail, Oh, Andy, sorry.
I have one that's not on that list, which is Heritage Rail.
I do
Why
actually
steam train?
I included steam trains in the big long list, which
Right.
I've done, which is every single type of transport that we should have in NaPTAN, and I included Heritage Rail because we'd talked about it. Our SRO, the person who was looking after, and the deputy director, the DD for NaPTAN, was rather delighted to find out that she looks after steam trains and Heritage Rail. So at some point we will go on Heritage Rail as a team. The other one here is light rail that can be boarded by any member of the public with a valid ticket. It is not on the GBR network. Now, this is Docklands Light Rail, and I've put the Luton Dart on here, even though the Luton Dart is the thing that has caused all of this problems, because nobody knows what it is, because it defines in multiple ways. And then finally, there's private land light rail, which is a tram or a metro on private land that can be boarded by any member of the public, valid ticket. It is not on the GBR network, e.g. the Gatwick Terminal Interchange train. Now, weirdly enough, currently the Gatwick Terminal Interchange train is coded up as a National Rail train, which is one of the things that highlighted all of these problems, because we wanted to look at, okay, so the Luton data is very much like the Gatwick Terminal Interchange, and this is about redefining and understanding and creating a definition for everything so that anyone knows how to code these things. And then finally, there's a train, and there will be heritage trains as well. A train that can be boarded any of the member public with a valid ticket is on the GBR network, e.g. London Bridge to Brighton train. I've just always put in an example so that anyone can kind of go and have a look. Is these definitions fine? But the other question is, what is the difference between a light rail and a metro/tram? And Tim, NaPTAN, for referring us to the schema, because I have been hacking through the schema trying to figure out if you've defined these in any way that matches this.
No, I wasn't going to refer the schema. So private land light rail, your example of Gatwick Terminal Interchange train is challenging because you don't actually need a ticket for it. If you get to the terminal, you just go on it. There is no need for a ticket a permit to travel.
Right, needs no ticket. Yeah,
and there are a few like that.
Yeah, and they're part of the public transport, and you need to be within the airport. And to be within the airport, you either need to be somebody who is travelling. I believe it's just on private land.
Publicly accessible part of it. You don't need a flight ticket or anything like that.
Ticket needed. Okay. I will put the valid ticket is you need no ticket for this one. I was trying to think of the various ones because the interchanges at Heathrow they're free, but they're also part of the main ticketed parts of the network as well. So it's slightly different. So I was just trying to think of one that was so if anyone has another example of private land light rail, that would be really useful.
Is there one at Stansted Airport?
Does Stansted have two terminals?
No, but isn't there a monorail or something that goes from the terminal to the departure gate? So I'm not sure. I think I've been on it a long time ago.
Okay, I haven't travelled in such a long time, and I can't spell Stansted. It's got no D.
Okay,
yeah. It's only got the one D. I will put that down as a question to have a look at because it's just trying to find them. One of my other questions
is airside, Tom.
Is it? All right. So it's private then. So you need to be a traveller. You need to be flying somewhere to get on it. Fine.
Yeah, technically it's not on. Technically it's not in the UK because it's airside.
Oh, okay.
You have to have a passport to get there.
Yeah. You left the UK. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there one of my questions? Oh, sorry, Tim.
Yeah, I was about to say I think the really interesting one, which could become a rabbit hole, is Tom and Kyle's tram train, where the tram leaves the light rail tram network and goes on mainstream rail network and shares some stops. But at least one of the stops that's on the national rail network is only for tram, in inverted commas, passengers, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And this is, I actually have an example of that, so we will get onto that because that's a really fascinating one as to how I should be coding it and how it should be matched across. is there a real world difference between metro/tram/light rail? I think there is, but I just wanted to double check with you as to how you see them. Or are those three things kind of like combined in your mind to pretty much the same thing?
Traditionally, tram and light rail are much similar to metro. So Newcastle would say they haven't got a tram, they've got a metro. Glasgow also have a metro. And that's because it goes underground.
Okay, cool. That's a really good kind of little understanding there. So looking at the tram, looking at the stops, because I was then asked, how do I define the stops for these? So I said a tram stop is a stop for a tram which is on the street. It is part of the street furniture. Whereas a tram or a light rail or a metro station, they're platforms which is separate from the street infrastructure. So this is me working mostly from a London basis, but also being up in Newcastle for a couple of days. So the tram stops, a tram stop is on the street. So I can walk across the street to it. I don't need to leave the street to get to it. Whereas if I'm talking about a tram, a light rail, or a metro station, or a rail station, I generally have to leave the street and go through some kind of infrastructure to either go up or down, or sometimes sideways, but I have to go into some infrastructure to access the tram, light rail, metro. Does this make sense, or is this not a complication? Is this something that Beryl would understand as to what she would expect to see when she was trying to travel? If she was told it's a tram stop, would she expect it to be on the street, whereas a light rail stop she would expect to have to do something to get to the platform?
I mean,
How is it?
I think
I
I'd
think
say
it
that
makes
makes sense.
sense.
Like if you're looking at, I'm trying to think at tram stops, and I'm trying to think, is there any that you have to go through infrastructure to get to? And the only one would be Rotherham railway station, which is obviously your station. So that's the rail stop that the tram train does serve. And you can't access that any other way. I think they were looking at potentially doing it when we first looked at it, but to get the infrastructure in place, it'd make it too complicated. So they just decided station.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
The other one I think would be Meadow Hall, where that's off the highway. It's in the interchange, and
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about this, so places like Meadow Hall and the Cathedral tram stop, you don't necessarily know which platform the tram is going to leave from.
Cathedral, yeah, because it can come back.
Creating a bus route, but if you're creating the tram timetable, you would code it to the station rather than the stop. I don't know whether that confuses things, Dr. J, or helps.
I haven't even gotten that far. I'm literally trying to go, if I need to define a tram stop or a light rail stop, what's the differences that a person would see looking at them in terms of access? Because it ties into some of the accessibility questions as well. But also, so can change platforms. That was what.
And
I
the
was
fact that you literally you can't with a tram, you can walk over the tracks, can't you? But obviously with the rail, it's illegal to walk on the tracks, isn't it? So I'm not sure if that comes into it as well.
So hilariously, there is a London stop it's in West London. It's near Twickenham. I can't remember the name of it. Where you can walk across, but you have to go to the little controlled crossing to walk across the tracks. And it's a train station that is level. It's separate from the street, so it still keeps us separate from the street. But it's one of the few level train stations. But to cross from one side to the other, you go and you walk across a little controlled crossing area. But it's the only one that I've found. So
I guess that's what makes it interesting, the exceptions, isn't it?
Oh, my life is finding edge cases. Everything that we say, I'm like, but I have an edge case for it.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. And then a rail station is very much a pair or more of platforms with where a train can stop, separate from the street infrastructure. Now, one of the things that is on my list, and I hope to get it cleaned up relatively soon once I've gotten rid of all of the duff stations, is to put platforms in for as many rail stations as I can that match, because currently we've got all of our rail stations, but I've only got 3 rail platforms, which is ridiculous because my local rail station over here at Elephant and Castle has 4 platforms, so I know that we are short platforms by a long way. So one of the things is just finding the ones that are really simple, the ones that are 2s, putting those in, and then all of the ones that are more than 2s we can go through and put in the multiple platforms, because that will hopefully help the travel mappers and the travel systems tell somebody which platform to go to when they're trying to join up and unify it. Because at the moment you're getting things like go to Elephant and Castle, but it can't tell you which platform to go to unless it's connected through to 2 or 3 other systems to get that platform information. Tim?
Trying to map rail and underground stations all the way down to platform level is a very significant task, not just as a one-off, but on an ongoing. And certainly, at least for national rail stations, there are data sets already that are maintained by the rail industry that I think we would probably be much better long term from a data quality point of view, trying to map a NaPTAN code for a rail station to the tip lock or whatever for national rail data, and relying on that translation for it.
Totally there with you. That means that I need to clean up my stations to match their stations, because we've got some stuff that no longer exists or no longer has national rail trains running through it. So there's lots of little cleanups that I need to do, and it is about joining those 2 data sets and making sure that we can join them in various ways. All of the metro stations, especially in London, are mapped, and one of the things that's not mapped is their relative depths, because there's some interesting interchanges that you can do where, while the station isn't step-free, you can actually do step-free interchanges between some tube lines if you choose the right stations to do it at. And it's trying to find ways to pass on that sort of level of information in various ways, and just ensuring that we've got some of that data within our system. I don't think I'm going to solve rail stations overnight. My first one is just figuring out, do I have all the right ones, and how many am I missing, and how many extras and old ones do I still have? Because I know that I've got a couple of stations where trains don't call anymore. So is it a station if a train don't call at it? And that's an interesting one. If we're public transport access nodes and no public transport runs from that access node, is it still an access node? I will leave that one with you. Do these definitions make sense, though, in terms of making the differences clear? And they make sense to you, and hopefully they would make sense to Beryl, our lovely passenger that we see trying to travel on something more than just a bus now. Cool. I'm seeing nods from Kyle, so I will continue on. So I did have a thing here of asking what is the difference between these, between a tram, a light rail, and a metro. I don't think there is that much of a difference. Like the light rail in London occasionally goes underground. Trams occasionally go underground. Trams occasionally run on what is effectively light rail or heavy rail, and most of the underground is overground because that would just, and it also in various cases shares lines and tracks and stations and station infrastructure with national rail trains. So there is a whole pile of bonkersness, which leads to the next one. Now I've used Heworth. Actually, just bear with me here 2 seconds. I've forgotten to bring across some images that I put in to make this a bit more understandable. Just give me 2 seconds to grab last time's mural and grab those 2 images. What is this meeting one? There we are. Bear with me for 2 seconds. Right. Just want unlock, copy, paste, and I'll put it down here. So now I've used Heworth. Apparently Heworth was not a good one. There's another one called St. Peter's. There's a whole pile of them on the roads up on the railway up to Amersham. But I'm using this one because St. Peter's, which was on the Newcastle Metro line, was an interesting one that we came up with. It's a rail station with 2 platforms. It's a metro station with 2 platforms, but these are the same place and the same platforms. So it's coded in twice as a rail station and a metro station. Now, should it exist twice in the data or only once in the data? And this is really interesting when you look at the metro line going out to Amersham, Metropolitan line, because at the Chalfonts and Latimer's and places like that, it has London Metropolitan trains calling as well as National Rail trains calling at the same stations on the same tracks on the same platforms, because it's only got 2 platforms. So how do we code this up in a way that's really sensible? Do I need to have it in twice or only in once? And is it in once with 2 types of platforms, or is it in once with 2 different types of platforms? I'm curious to know.
Is it the same parts of the platform? We have
Yes.
a station. We have a couple of stations where a heritage rail goes on national rail, but they use the same track, but they use a separate part of the platform. So it's, they are defined as 2 different stops. If they're using the same place, doesn't the hierarchy come into account, and then the tram can use the rail stop or whichever way round it goes?
That is part of what I'm trying to understand, because I don't think if there is a hierarchy, it's very well understood by other people. So if it's on the same platform, same place on same platforms, which is the I know definitely happens at, I think it's Chalfonts, but it's a couple of the other stops on the way out to Amersham and Chesham on the Metropolitan line, where they've only got two platforms. The different types of transit call at those same platforms. So this is slightly different from your tram train, I think, Kyle and Tom, but it might be, yeah. How different is it? And if it's the same place, so if it's on different parts of the platform, they're different stops. But if it's the same place on the same platform, how do we let somebody know?
The tram's lower than the train, so they had to extend the platform and lower it. So it does stop at 2 different points at Rotherham. So it did need 2 at the time. I'm not sure whether there was ever a discussion regarding whether it would use the same stop as the rail. I'm not sure whether that's something we'd be able to whether we'd be able to do. I'm not entirely sure.
So this problem has resulted because over the years there has been multiple people working the centrally managed stops at DFT, and there have been calls made and decisions made that don't entirely make sense in retrospect. And this is part of what I'm trying to understand so that I can leave DFT with this is what is coded as what very, very clearly with pictures and my little ladybird book of stops, so that people can understand this. When somebody asks for a metro stop, this is what they're meaning. When somebody asks for a tram stop, this is what they're meaning. When somebody asks for a tram train interchange stop like this one, where you've got this weird interchange, this is how we code them up, and just kind of set some nice clear standards. And this is kind of working on top of the definitions in the schema. But also, if I want to give yous the ability to edit these central stops, we remove that technical constraint that it's got to be edited by DFT, and we find a way of opening up editing this. And I can say to Kyle, hey, if you put in a new tram stop, you can just put in a new tram stop. I need to tell Kyle how to do it. I need to tell Kyle what the rules are. And at the moment, we've just got if somebody says it's National Rail, we code it as National Rail. If somebody says it's a metro stop, we code it this way. And we're not asking the right questions sometimes, I don't think, which has come up with the Dart, because nobody knows what it should be coded as, because it gets even worse because it's technically a cable car. Tim.
So I'm not going to reference the schema, but I'm going to reference modelling of stop points. And so in Tran's model, which is effectively where NaPTAN comes from, there is a concept of platforms are called keys, like you would have on a dock, but there is a concept of a zone within a key. So to deal with the platform 1A, platform 1B type arrangement, and from a how you model it, and then how this data might be usable in timetables and location data feeds, you only really want one. You don't want a platform that is the same physical infrastructure for rail and another one for tram. They're shared.
Yeah.
And they really, because otherwise you get real problems when it comes to journey planning and interchanges, particularly when live planning is involved.
Yeah. More issues. Kyle.
If it were to use it, would the file, say you were building a file for, let's say, our tram, would it be a valid file if it had a rail stop in there?
That's interesting. I'd have to sit down and think about it, because
it might not be possible to even put it in. Or would it? I mean, if we were to download it, would you? But then you'd have to edit it if it wouldn't go in. I don't know whether when you put in a service or whatever, it'd say, right, this is a tram. It's now using a rail stop. So
this is the technical fun that I'm trying to think of, because there are real technical issues that we need to solve. Because one of the things that has been requested and everyone seems to want to do, and it's on the very long list of things, is why does DFT have to edit all these centrally managed stops? Because we don't know when you put in a tram stop. It's even more confounding for places like Manchester, where they were moving their tram stops and doing quite a lot of work on their tram stops, and they were constantly having to come to us and join what is a ridiculous backlog for me at the moment of work that needs to be done and stops that need to be put in and edited. And everything's reliant on somebody in DFT making those changes when you know where the stop is, you know when it's going to be live, you know what it should be called. All of that stuff is knowledge that you have that we don't have. So I'm very much the person what's got the knowledge should be able to do the edit. But there's quite a few technical things that we need to sort out. And Kyle, you've brought up some of them. Do we do this via a web interface and give you access to add or create or edit stops, but how do we then limit them to only your area so that you don't go and accidentally edit a tram stop in Manchester? There's all these technical things that we need to consider and think through, and it's kind of one of the pieces that will run from the next couple of services I'm working on. So the next service I'm working on is how we manage and split ATCO codes and how we talk about them, and then from that we will then be able to hit some of the permissioning around how do we know when your tram stop is in Kyle's area and Kyle can edit it, and when Andy has a heritage, I'm going to say a new heritage train stop, and we'll laugh at that, but Andy has a new heritage train stop. Somebody's reactivated one of the old stations and wants it put in. That should be something, because Andy will know about it. Andy will probably be playing with the steam train on it, but Andy will definitely know about it and be involved in it. So why are we having to have those extra layers when we could have it managed? But I need to figure out how, why, where, who, and all of those little pieces around it. So bear with me while I sort that out. It is going to take some time to think through. Does that make sense? I'm seeing a couple of nods, and I'm seeing Tim give approving grimaces, because this is a hard technical problem. It's not an easy technical problem.
It is, and to pick up on Kyle's question about can you actually map a bus to a tram stop and a tram to a rail station and things like that, I suspect most people's software would have some form of block in there for that at the moment, and that's one of the practical challenges. There's the theoretical modelling side of things, and then there's the practical world. But I know that Trapeze and Mentz can do it because I've made them do it in Switzerland and Austria as part of modelling work and standardisation of national access points work across Europe. So we know it can be done, but I suspect most people in the UK software won't allow them to do it.
Andy, I see you've got your hand up very patiently there.
Yeah, two bits. One on that one, we can, in the Mentz system, I know we can track our vehicles to different or wrong stops, because one of the audits I have to run to make sure people don't. I do know it's possible, and we've had to use it in a place, Luton, I think, because the new Airbus air train thing came in, and we had to fudge it until National Rail could get it in their data and things like that. The other point was, I know you want to be able to let the local person edit these tram stops and train stops and rail stops and whatever, but the amount that get changed, does it really need to be done? It's because, like you say, it's a massive engineering project to get so that we can add our own tram stops. But the amount of change that happens on the rail network for trams and etc., it may be more efficient for us to just email DFT and they add it for us. Because the amount of work that changes.
You see, and here's the fun thing of that assumes that there's always somebody at DFT who understands how to edit it and how to look after this mailbox and to look for those things and to understand the questions to ask to get that. And that has been patchy over the years and is still patchy at the moment. There is nobody running the mailbox bar me. I've got two people helping me with the triage, but if anything's not a simple query, it's ending up in a long bucket for me to look at. And I know that people are asking for like localities and things like that, and it's like, we gave people the ability to edit localities, not to delete them though, which is why there's a whole pile of test localities floating around in the data set that we need to get rid of. Again, problem number 7 or 8 on my list. Once I can delete stuff, I can then start to delete localities that are obviously not localities. They were test ones that people were learning with, and then kind of looking at how we make localities editable and viewable and keep that stuff going, because there is a cost in the system, and if we want this to run till 2050 in a nice, sane, stable way, either I turn around and say to DFT, right, you've got to have a person with these skills employed for the next 30 years, or you spend the money and you devolve the responsibility off to these people, and we can then do the cost comparison between those. Because we're asking for something that isn't a full-time enough, it isn't quite a full-time job, but also needs somebody to be consistent and constant and regularly doing this work, and there just hasn't been that, because it's always been an apprentice level job or a job that's been on somebody else's thing, and it just doesn't get done. And I know we're suffering at the moment from some of that, because I am trying to do 3 roles right now, and it's a little bit on the hard side. That's not me whining about doing 3 roles, by the way. It's trying to say to people who are waiting for stuff, I'm really sorry, take a number. I am serving number 1 at the moment, and you may be picking up a 3-digit number. It's okay. I am churning through the work as fast as I can. Leaving behind our platforms and that, let's move across to a couple of little things that we need to sort out. And there's a thing around taxis. Now, when I talk about a taxi, I am talking about your licensed Hackney cab, the license to carry hailed on the street taxi, not your private hire vehicle. I'm talking about that particular type, because we don't really care about private hire vehicles that much within NaPTAN, but apparently we do care about taxis. So we have 2 things currently. One is a taxi and the other one is a shared taxi. Now, I can find a number of different definitions of these. Can do any of you know the difference between them? And is there a difference between them in your local areas and local authorities that you look after? I'm seeing confusion. Do you have taxi ranks in your NaPTAN? Some people do.
None of mine.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, I don't have any in mine. We have taxi bus, but then it comes in as a bus. So where taxis are used, actually the taxi vehicle is used in replacement of a bus. They're normally minibuses anyway. That will be treated as a bus, so we would not put taxis in the system. And most taxis, is the way, other than London, the pick-up and drop-off point can be anywhere. They can park in certain places, but the pick-up and drop-off can be anywhere. So I don't know how you would model them.
So the modelling that we're looking at, and this is on the, I hate to null point myself, but I'm null pointing myself for return to the schema. We've been trying to model them on the way that a taxi rank is where you are more likely to find a taxi than somewhere else on the street. Because I know that there are cab ranks in London, I've seen them in Liverpool, I've seen them in Manchester, I've seen them in a couple of places. They're often outside rail stations. I've seen them in Amersham as well. So they're outside rail stations, and they're where taxis will park while waiting for a ride. So they will come and wait there for a train to come. They know that the last train comes in at 11 o'clock, and there's likely to be a ton of people who have had to catch the train to Amersham because the train to Chesham got cancelled. So they'll sit there and pick up a number. They know to arrive for that because there'll be a number of fares off to Chesham and other parts where the trains got cancelled. So the taxi rank is just a place on the street where you're more likely to find a taxi or a cab. I still don't know what a shared taxi is. I'm reaching the point of saying a shared taxi may have been something that existed 20 years ago. I've found 2 or 3 different schemes for it. And in post-COVID times, it no longer exists because people don't want to be around other people as much as possible. People, there's still a lot of people who are wary, especially as COVID's coming back. Kyle?
I was just saying there is some sort of app, isn't there, when you can, I can't think what it's called, but there is a shared taxi app, not Uber. I can't remember the name of it. Something like Lyft or something as silly as that, and they can see where the person is going from their pickup to wherever, and somebody can jump in like halfway. But I think it's more of an app-based kind of thing rather than a stop, really.
I think it's the private hire. I think those are private hire because I know with Uber you can do that in London. You can. You used to be able to book a shared Uber where there'll be 2 or 3 people and it will share them across. I hated them, massively unsafe, but that's just me. Thank you for the train taxi link, whoever put it in. It's a really interesting one to look at for when you're coming off a train. This is also one of the questions because there's somebody who's been asking me why there are no taxi ranks listed in some places. So this is why I'm asking it, just because I want to make sure everyone understands what a taxi is and a shared taxi is, so that if I ask people to put things in, we're talking about the same thing and I can define it and we're not talking about wildly different things.
Yeah, the shared taxi services that I was aware of, I think now are all demand responsive type services. So they used to be a thing 20 odd years ago. But now I suspect that they're all DRT or flexible services or something like that.
Yeah, we have like the community transport things here. So, for example, my mum, she gets a Rotherham community transport minibus from work back home. But I know that if there is somebody else kind of on that route, they'd maybe pick them up there, maybe drop them off, and then go and make that thing. But that's more of a, like I said, like community transport taxi, I guess, because they do pay per trip. But that's
Kyle,
but
your voice
the other
dropped
reason
out there.
What's that, sorry?
No, your voice dropped out. So you said they do pay per trip, and then you went quiet, so I didn't catch the next line.
Just saying that's the only other thing I could really think of, basically. And share takes a bus in it.
Yeah. Would be really good just to get confirmation if that is booked via a website or an app or a phone line. It's just making sure.
The community one's it's by phone call. So she did it by phone call. She works at a school, so it basically if she says the day before, say she's not working this Friday, on the Thursday trip, she'd just say don't worry about coming to pick me up, and then the driver must speak to the company, kind of thing.
So yeah, it's very DRT driven. Yeah. That's really good to understand what this is. Between these 2 meetings, it's leading me to shared taxis no longer exist, and let's look at anyone who's listing a shared taxi moving across to be a taxi stand, and then kind of quietly withdrawing shared taxis from the list of things that people create. It'll still be in the schema, but we'll just say, look, this doesn't exist. This is just part of quiet tidy, not changing anything. We're just quietly tidying things up a bit.
I suspect, Dr. J, that the split between taxi and shared taxi was put in there from a modelling point of view, because when Nick was designing NaPTAN, he was also thinking about the wider European perspective, because the NaPTAN scheme has gone on to be included in in a modified way into the stop point stuff in NetX, and shared taxis are very definitely a thing in Germanic countries. They have different stops outside of rail stations for shared taxis and single-use taxis.
Yeah. Point of EU view. Damn the EU. So very, very quickly, there's one other quick question here. Because I'm based in London, but also when I saw this in Manchester and Liverpool, a cab or a taxi was always an accessible vehicle. Now, is that true everywhere, or is it only true in the bigger metropolitan areas?
Not true everywhere.
Yeah, definitely not.
No.
So this is because this is one of those things of, as somebody looking for ways to start understanding and putting in some of this accessibility that everyone's howling about. It's like, because all the Londoners say, well, of course a cab is accessible. And then when I went to Brighton, only half of the Brighton cabs are accessible. So when you say not true everywhere, is it not true blanketly, or is it not true in that some of your cabs will be accessible and some won't? Or is it just you take your best guess and you might end up in the back of a minivan or something like that with your wheelchair? And I'm not getting, actually, I prefer to use baby buggies than wheelchairs to talk about this, simply because wheelchairs gets you into the size of powered wheelchairs, which is a rabbit hole I am not going to run down.
Most places, if you black cab type arrangements, it's probably 50-50 now. Maybe a bit more that are accessible for the hailing ones, but the mini cabs,
oh yeah,
an awful lot aren't.
It's more for the licensed one of what is your licensing, because if you're saying you have to be accessible or some of the fleet has to be accessible, that's slightly different to the private hire vehicles, which are just, it's a car and as long as it's roadworthy, which is quite different. Cool. We're ripping through this. Now, here's a fun one, and Tim will possibly give me some history on this. There's a whole thing called telecabines. And believe it or not, the Luton Dart literally qualifies as a particular type of these, because it is a cable car, because the incline is too steep for a locomotive. So it is a type of funicular. So I've turned around and said, well, technically, and everyone's just been like, oh my God, you are the worst at diving into rabbit holes. So do you have any of these things? So there's a cable car, which is your telecabine, or what did somebody say? A gondola. The IFS Cloud is technically a cabled gondola, where you've got a ropey thing and little cabiny things that spin around. The other one is we've got public lifts. So there are public lifts in London between various levels, and I know some exist in other hilly places, where in Holborn Viaduct there's a couple of places where you can go where you can catch a lift that's publicly accessible from one level to another, to save having to do a very long step-free walk around the streets. And then there's also funiculars, which are to all my destinations via specialised railway cable car, which is usually on a big slopey thing. And I'm not going to even attempt to abble with Cliff Railway, because I can't speak Welsh. There's a Cliff Railway. Andy, you might have some in Devon as well.
I've got a few in Devon, Dorset, but none of them are in our data. I just checked.
I know they aren't.
Linton Linmouth one, I suppose, is the biggest one, which is not in the data. I checked that one. So
Yeah.
if they were of any use, well, I suppose they are very big public transport, so we could add them.
Yeah. It's trying to, but it's also trying to think of, should we add them? Do we add them? How do we describe the differences between these three types? Because these three types are also described in various ways in the system, and how do we describe them? And also, are they public transport? The public lifts are really interesting for accessibility when we start talking about accessibility and pathways and things like that. I see Tim nodding in agreement.
Need to be in, because if you're looking at how you help people plan to get from A to B without using private transport, you need every option available to you. And these three are what is now a subset, because there are more modes within NetX and other European model standards now.
What are the other ones that I should be considering that now effectively
well,
all
in a
of
UK,
these?
I think in a UK context, this is what we've got now. Let's not worry about causing more problems, because they're not supported in the schema at the moment that we're working on.
I was more just making sure that we don't have a gap unintentionally, ignoring something that's coming in. Although I don't know of anyone who uses the IFS cloud to commute, because I don't know anyone who works between. They're very carefully covered up. They've changed it, and it's now almost for tourists only. Is there another one of these in the country, or is there only the IFS cloud?
There's ones on private land in Scotland.
There's a cable car in Matlock in Derbyshire, but I don't know if that's...
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's publicly accessible. Yeah, that's not just to the theme parky thing that's at the top of the hill.
Cool. That's good to know. I can now find a second one, because I was like, if it's only the IFS cloud, we could almost say don't use this. But now there's another one. It's kind of like, okay, so we do have to figure out how to put it in. I've got a meeting with some of the TfL people to take them around and show them the couple of public lifts that I know about, and then figure out how, because they're obviously maintained by TfL in various ways, but they're outside of a station, so it becomes an interesting thing. And we've got Devon and Dorset. I know, Andy, you've got a couple. Don't put them in yet. Yeah. Don't rush to put them in. Let's do it in a very controlled, understandable. We'll spell out how they should be put in and start to promote that, so that our downstream consumers can suddenly go, oh, I can start to use this for planning, and this is how I represent a stop. This is how I would tell Beryl how it's used, and we can figure out other bits and pieces that they need.
I do have a cable car, apparently.
You have a cable car?
Yeah, well, it's a chairlift more than a cable car, but it's listed under cable cars under my Google search I've just found. Most of them are in Wales and Scotland, but I found one on the Isle of Wight.
It's WHYTE, isn't it? Yes. What? Or have I misspelt the Isle of Wight?
It's WIGHT, I think.
Yeah, it is. That's correct. That's it.
Oh, White as in scary beasting. Okay, got you. I'm for all of those who play D&D, I have now recognised that a white is a white. For those who don't play D&D, just continue to be confused. Cool. We are cracking through this one remarkably fast. The next thing I just wanted to talk about is, do you have any requests for next time? Let me just grab some of the ones that we came up with in the previous discussion. Was entrances to stations, stop areas, which I've said will need to be a massive deep dive, so that's not for next time. National stops, whose responsibility, we've kind of covered that. Language, that needs to be a massive deep dive, but there will be, we can touch on it. Next stop messages and alternative descriptors. So is there anything, those were ideas that people came up with last time. Do you have anything that you'd like to talk about?
I think that stop name for next stop announcements would be a really timely one.
Yeah.
I will say possibly I need to check in with Catherine because we've got something planned for early next year around stop names. So I don't want to preempt it too much. And I want to see what's a good balance to build out here. But next stop names. Because this is local, there's a little corner here that I will put in called local versus national. Because I know, and I think it was in South Yorkshire, but somebody can tell me that I'm wrong, one of the bus operators puts a lot of effort into having a really good voiceovers on their buses, and they use local people and they use very local names.
Northern Rail have just done that.
And they often overwrite this particular bus operator was almost overwriting what was coming out of NaPTAN because the names in NaPTAN were not matching what locals called it. So they would always refer to the stops as to what locals called them on their next stop announcements and things like that.
I think a lot of it's just the pronunciation, though, isn't it, as well? You know, for example, there's a stop near us which people would think it was Dodworth, but they changed it all, so the announcer says Dodworth. And there's loads like that in Yorkshire, but the actual spelling of it is the same. So I don't know how it would affect the data.
I don't think it's not so much those spelling ones. There's a couple of others. For example, I've got there's a stop down from me called Dunstan Road. That's what it should be called, but it's always called Old Kent Road Tesco's, which is not a proper name, but nobody knows where Dunstan Road is. Everyone knows where Old Kent Road Tesco's is, and I think TfL have just given up and gone, we're calling it Old Kent Road Tesco's. To hell with this, to hell with the rules, because nobody knew where Dunstan Road was, because Dunstan Road is a small road on a light industrial estate right next to the ginormous Old Kent Road Tesco's, which is the only Tesco's on big Tesco's on Old Kent Road. It's like the Asda half a mile about half a mile away from that, which is just known as the Big Asda. I'm going to the Big Asda. It's like going to the Big Little over going to the Small Little. I'm mentioning as many DFT does not have any opinion as to which supermarkets should be landmarks and which should not. It's very much up to locals as to what they call those landmarks and how we represent the stops that allow people to hop off at the right one. So Kyle and Tom, do you still have the pub names or the stop names where the pub went 20 years ago, but everyone still calls it that particular pub, or have you removed those?
Sometimes you get the request where people say this pub doesn't. If you get a request from a customer, you kind of think, is it time to move on? So we might then amend the landmark. But sometimes people do, like you say, they know that's a stopping point for them. That's where the Queen's was. It's like like I grew up in a place, and the centre of it was always called Queen's Corner, and that's what everybody knew. Like if I were coming back on bus, my mum would say, "I'll meet you at Queen's Corner," even though it's High Street. So you've got that obviously local terminology, but I guess that's just, that's everywhere. I know Stagecoach are doing a lot with their onboard announcements. Yeah, and because we went in in line with the audio visual project we had here. So they have it displayed at the top that this is the next stop that you can get off at, and then obviously they announce it as well. I'm not sure on the terminology on that. I'd have to check and ask them, but I can do that and see what they're doing with that, whether they're just pulling straight from NaPTAN or whether they're recording themselves.
Yeah, it's not, and it's more when they're doing the displays and that. If they're doing edits, it's understanding that they're doing edits, because it means every time that they're pulling data from us, they're having to rerun either the same script or do some changes, and it's just being aware of that extra work that's going on and trying to find ways to smooth that out as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be of course, yeah, thinking just off the top of my head, you could get to the point where people are referring to stops as the one that Stagecoach are announcing, if that's a route, and then we list it as the main roadside road convention. So you might get people complaining about that, possibly. So we'd probably say to them to try and use the format that we do as best they can, and then maybe make some special cases, I guess. Think it as a professional rather than a user right now.
And it's trying.
Go on, sorry.
I was just going to say, it's trying to understand that complexity is one of the things. I think we're looking at a big, larger piece around names, because we're recognizing that there's a lot of problems. Battersea Power Station, which is the technical name and the proper name, but is not the name, because station seems wrong, but it's actually right, because Battersea Power Station, and there's a few others like that, especially with the need to put a slash in, or which way round you need to put a slash in, because that is actually, it's a main road crossroad, or there's Tottenham Court Road, Gower Street, which is different to Gower Street because they're at totally different ends, and one is by the Tottenham Court Road station. But Tottenham Court Road, Gower Street creates all kinds of problems in a lot of the naming systems, because it's ridiculously long, but also everyone's like, but it's got two roads, and it's like, yes, it's telling you it's the Gower Street, it's at the Tottenham Court Road end of Gower Street, not the other end of Gower Street, which is, a good half a mile away, and they're two very distinct bus stops. And it's just understanding those problematic ones and looking at what's sensible stuff, or what's sensible guidance or guardrails to give around those edge cases, so that you're not trying to fix all the edge cases. You're just trying to go, okay, edge cases fit in this box, and if you fall outside this box, find a way of fitting your edge case into this box, because there'll be a way of making it work. Is very much where I'm heading, which is, I think, slightly different to some of the older school styles, which were it must look like this. I'm trying to get that understanding of what everything looks like. Anyway, is there anything else that you just want to talk about? I know stop areas is going to be like a ginormous piece, so I'm wanting to put that one off for a while. While you have a think, I am going to pull up over here and then bring across, because then I can find the right mural easily. I am just going to pull up. I don't want to run that through with you, but I will. I did it last time, but let me do this again. I just need to grab something and copy and paste it in. Just bear with. I need to find the one that I shared, because I want to. I've got a thing that I'm trying to sort out, and the thing that I'm trying to sort out is around the managed removal. So let me grab that. Let me unlock everything. Yes, just unlock everything. Sorry, Bear with me muttering along. Right. Copy. I will just throw this in over here. Do that and then do this. I'm just going to slob it in down the bottom. Okay, cool. So you can all see down the bottom, I've pasted up some stuff. And this is the managed removal. We've got a nice happy path. And then there's, I'll talk to you about why there's 8 things. So happy path, you'll get this little thing saying remove NaPTAN stops when you've got access. It'll take you to a page that talks you through how to remove a stop. You're going to be taken through this very, very slowly when you come on board, so don't worry if I'm going a bit fast. You can start the removal process. You put in your ATCO code, it will go off and it will do 3 checks. So it will check that the stop is in the NaPTAN data set. So this means that you can't remove something that doesn't exist. And the reason for that is we figured out that somebody could basically mess up their NaPTAN data set by blocking an entire pile of ATCO codes which didn't exist. So it's just saying, okay, you can only remove a stop that exists. The stop isn't in the removal list, so we're checking whether or not you're trying to remove a stop that's already been removed. We know that if there's multiple people doing it, that's a possibility. And the other one is we check TNDS because it covers Scotland and Wales, and we look for a stop being in a published bus route. So those are the 3 checks that we do. Now, those are all binary checks. So there's either a yes, no for them. So there are 8 conditions that can happen from 3 binary checks. Just trust me on that. I did the maths. We figured it out. It's 2 to the power of 3. It's your standard bit of binary. So the main one is when everything's basically fine, you can confirm the removal and bang, the stop can be removed, and that is kind of option 1, and it's successful. Then we've got what next steps do I need to do, and these are the 7 other conditions. And I just want to talk you through and make sure that how I'm talking about them matches with how you would think about them, because this is the time when we haven't coded this up yet, so we're still figuring out how to explain some of these. So we've got a stop that is in a live journey. So we've run the check. It's in NaPTAN. It's not on the remove list, but when we check TNDS, there is some bus operator somewhere who is using this stop on a live journey for whatever reason. Sometimes these stops have not been, it's by accident, they've ended up picking up an invalid stop, or you might have put in slightly the wrong stop. You've put in it with one number slightly wrong, and when you look here, you'll be like, oh, no, I can see I put in the wrong stop. But for the most part, it's being used by accident by a bus operator. Is the screen enough? Is there anything else you would need on the screen to help you understand that the stop is being used in a live journey?
The operator and route that's being used. Because if the stop is definitely going to be removed, you'd need to let the operator know that on that route is a bad stop.
Yeah, and I think it's also, these are stops that possibly very much like the some of the ones that I've been sending you, Andy. They haven't existed for many years, but somehow some bus operator is still thinking that they're running a bus. And they might just not have corrected to the new stop that is close by or miles away or whatever. This one is the stop doesn't exist in NaPTAN. So you gave us an ATCO code number, but it just doesn't exist. You've put in an O when it should have been a 0. You've put in a Z when it should have been a 2, whatever. Hopefully this one's nice and clear. Now, here's an interesting one. The stop has been removed, but it's still in NaPTAN. Now, this is. Oh, Kyle, I'll stop and talk first.
Just quickly, just on that one, do you know where you say it doesn't exist? In the error box, could we put the stop number there that you've actually entered?
Oh, yes.
Just because then you can look at it and go, oh, I've put in a 4 instead of a 3, or if it is a 0 instead of an O, then you might be able to recognise that, so you don't then make the same error again.
Perfect. Thank you. That's a really, really good one. So the next one is when you remove a stop. So we are not doing a complete live pull from NaPTAN. We're doing a pull that's got about a 6 to 12 hour delay on it, just to save energy, because this is something that's not being run all the time. So one of the things is when you've removed a stop and then you try and remove it again, it will show up as being in the NaPTAN data and also on the removed list. So this is, and what you then need to have done is taken it out of your local data and republished your NaPTAN data to take it out of our NaPTAN list. Does that make sense? So essentially, once you've marked it for removal, your next step is to go and take it out of your local data. And then once you've taken it out of your local data, it's to republish your data up to NaPTAN. In betwixt those steps, Tom could have removed a stop, and then Kyle goes and tries to remove the same stop. Kyle would receive this error to say, it's been removed, you just need to republish your NaPTAN data without the stop in. Does that kind of make sense? I know it's a newish step, it's a new piece of the puzzle, but hopefully the understanding here kind of makes sense. I'm seeing nods. Excellent. This is a weird one, but it's also dreadfully possible because we have some of these things. So we've put in a stop. It's not a NaPTAN. It's not in the remove list, but we've found it in a live journey. So for example, there's a number of stops that Stagecoach use, I believe, for some of their depots that start 777. Just bear with me. Somebody's at my door. I can hear you, and I know that you can possibly hear me. Good morning. Cheers. So, running back, where am I? So they've put in a 777 stop or something. You've tried to remove that stop from the system, but because it's not a NaPTAN, because it's not a NaPTAN ATCO code, it's not a published stop, it's not there, but it is currently used in a live route. Would you is this giving you enough information? Is this basically, I don't care? Or is this, I would need to go and talk to that bus operator? Your next step?
I would want operator and route number.
Thank you, Andy, for kind of understanding what I was hitting there. And then I'm just going to duplicate that because I'm assuming we're going to say the same thing here. So here we have a stop that's been removed. It was a NaPTAN stop. We've removed it, but somehow when you've checked, it's still showing up as being used in a live bus journey. So somehow in the movement between you removing it and you republishing NaPTAN, somebody's picked it up and put it into a live journey. You just need to know the bus operator and the bus route. Cool. Here's the most complicated one, because this is the one where everything is marked as yes, and I'm just like, this is going to be such an edge case, but I need to explain it to you because you can possibly hit this. So the stop is a NaPTAN. So it was a NaPTAN stop. It's in the remove list because you've yet to republish your NaPTAN data. And somehow in the middle of that microsecond between you removing it and republishing your data, some idiot bus operator has gone and put it in a live route. This is what I'm intending on saying, although it's basically like this is the worst case of worst cases. Hopefully you will never see this. And I'm assuming I just do this.
Yeah.
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 Is there anything else you would need there? Tim's laughing because it is. I've got to think about.
You want a target on the screen, bang head here.
Absolutely, it's
could
like...
we have a username as well as who put it in?
I think just giving you the bus operator and the route number will tell you who's put it in, who's done this thing. But yes, it really would be a bang your head here. And the final one, which is the stop's already been removed. So, for example, Kyle and Tom were working on the same list. Kyle's gone and done it, hasn't had a chance, and republished NaPTAN and everything. Tom's gone to do it and suddenly sees this. The stop's already been removed from NaPTAN. You do not need to do anything else. Is there anything else that we need to have with this explanation? Check with your team member, buy him a drink. Kyle?
If it's been removed from NaPTAN, this might sound really silly. How would NaPTAN not know that it's been removed from NaPTAN?
Oh, NaPTAN
would it not
knows
just say it's not in NaPTAN?
It comes up, it says it's not a NaPTAN and it's on the removed list. So we actually are keeping a list of all of the stops that have been removed. And what that means is, you can't upload any stops, any NaPTAN file that contains anything on the removed list. The advantage of doing it this way means that we can then also give that list off to BODS and TNDS and say, you should not be accepting any trans exchange that uses any of these ATCO codes, because these ATCO codes have been withdrawn. These stops no longer exist. And that's kind of what we're giving back to the ecosystem in a really clear way of, like, we can give you a blacklist of stops that cannot be used in any trans exchange files or any routes that are published, which will hopefully help resolve bus operator and route number, because this stop has been used in a live journey. So it feels like there's a little bit of looping there, but we check against TNDS to make sure it's not being used. If it's not being used, and we check across 5 days worth of data. So when we're making sure that we don't have that risk of a route's been a route has ended, a timetable's ended, and sometimes there's a couple of days before the next one's published, especially if it falls across a bank holiday or something. So we made sure that we look across 5 days worth of data to ensure that there's no gaps.
Is it? Why would this, again, might be a silly question, why would you not look at maybe 7? Because they might run something different at the weekend. That's all I'm thinking. If you looked on a Monday, would it?
Oh no, we looked at when TNDS has updated itself, not when the files say, because the TNDS is only updated and published 5 days a week.
Okay.
So we worked with Amy to try and understand the length of the gaps and what the likelihood was, and there was nothing more than 2 or 3 days. So we went for 5.
Okay. Yep.
To be as safe as possible, because if something ends on a Friday and then they're publishing a new route on the Monday, in the system's mind, those are 2 adjacent days.
Mm-hmm.
There's no gap. Dear God, please don't be doing this on the weekend. Don't think that I'm doing this on the weekend. But it's very, very much making sure. So we took that, because, if it's 5 days, should it be 10? Should it be 15? So we went, okay, look, 5 days ensures that we cover all of the gaps that we could think of, that we could find, are well and truly covered. So we ensure that we've got the last 5 days data. We do the team grab all of the stops and put them in a data set, and then they check if it's more than 5 days old. They go back and just double check in the data set and just make sure that there's always a record of each stop that's being used in the data set.
Okay.
We aren't currently pulling from BODS, but as far as we understand, and Tim can confirm or deny here, TNDS covers both Scotland and Wales as well, and there's nothing in England in BODs that wouldn't be in TNDS. We are looking eventually to also pull from BODs just to double check, to make sure there's that double check, but for the moment we're only checking TNDS.
In theory, TNDS and BODs for England should be the same, but I know that there are subtle differences sometimes.
I'm
Closed school. There may be some closed school stuff in BODs that isn't in TNDS.
That's true.
Which,
yeah.
So we for the private beta, we're just working with TNDS because the BODs API doesn't give us what we need. So we're now going to we will go back and we will work with BODs to ensure that we can get the extra pieces that we need from them, and we'll make some requests there.
I mean,
but
BODs would carry on work. So if a stop was removed and it was actively in use by data in BODs, BODs would carry on publishing that because the validator only runs during import.
Yeah.
So next time somebody tried to update the data, it would get rejected because there was a stop that wasn't in NaPTAN, and it wasn't, or it was a stop not in NaPTAN was being used for more than 12 weeks or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that would get picked up at that point. So I wouldn't overly worry about it, but as Andy says, it's the closed door school services where there may be more of an issue.
Yeah, and those are an issue in and of themselves, which I'm not going to open that box here today. Because Tim was involved in some of the discussions. There will be some answers coming back. I will know what to say when the answers come back. They're giving me the line. Once I have the line to say, I will say the line. So that's making me feel comfortable, actually, because we do want to ensure that BODs comes across as well to kind of future-proof NaPTAN. Future-proof this process is just ensure that we've got both feeds, and we check both feeds. So that is we've covered off. We've done really well. So one of the things that we're looking at is now you've done all of these. We've in the bulk removal. I will need to describe all of these 8 using a sentence, which is probably what's up the top here. So I'm going to say things like, well, there'll be some. It won't say success removal. It'll say you can remove this. And then there'll be stop and live journey, and I will see if we can get the extra information. ACO code does not exist, and we'll flag that. Non-NaPTAN stop and live journey, remove stop and live journey, stop remove but still in NaPTAN, and already removed. So we've got some clear language, and we're going to do that on the results. On the way that we present your bulk results, we'll use those same wordings that will match what you would see if you were removing those individually. Does that? I'm just checking with Kyle and Andy, especially because you're going to be some of our first people. If you see anything here and you're like, oh, that makes my brain itch, it's slightly wrong, yell now, because we haven't coded anything and I can quickly tweak and change. And also, once we've coded and we're in private beta, we can quickly tweak and change, especially if it's wording or the way something is represented. Just to set an expectation, bus operator and route number might come after bulk removal, because it's kind of one of those features that we'll try to add. But it may mean, Andy, that our very first couple of runs of the Oxfordshire data may not give the bus operator. Cross fingers that there's nothing that pops up. And if there is, I can get somebody to do a manual search, and then we'll figure out, doing those manual searches, how we then track down the bus operator and the bus route.
Yeah. That
that
should
okay?
be fine, because our system should check it. Yeah, that should be fine.
Yeah.
Our system should check it that way first anyway.
Yeah, and it's just giving us that extra little bit of double checking and making sure. Could be somebody who's not using your system who's on a boundary. Oh yes, that's an entire thing on ATCO codes. Splitting ATCO codes is how we do boundary stops, where one side of the road is with one local authority and the other side of the road is with another. So I'll be pinging friendly people like yourselves and saying, can you give me an example of a boundary road that you like and a boundary road that you don't like, or you're not 100% happy with? And then I can kind of have a look at the differences and kind of start that conversation of how we do boundaries around our local authorities. Because, yeah, heaven forfend that anything is simple for me. Andy, stop laughing. Welcome to my world.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I've got both of those. I've got some that I'm not happy with because one side of the road is by one local authority and the other side of the road is another local authority, like you say. And I've got other ones where they are friendly local authorities and they just say, yeah, no, you can have both of them.
Yeah. And
Well,
this is...
we've got a really... What's that fun one we've got towards Derbyshire? I think the road is owned by Derbyshire, but it's within South Yorkshire's boundary or something, or it might be vice versa. South Yorkshire did the road, and so we want to do the stop, and it was like, do it. I'm not kicking off about it.
Yeah.
So it's another stop you'll need to clean, so you can do that.
So it would actually be really good to get those examples on those roads, just because I want to kind of, this is one of the things with splitting an ATCO code, is where we're now hitting how do you do the boundaries, because fortunately those people are friendly at the moment, but they've also got different boundary people who they bound with, and it's trying to set up how to do your boundaries, which is a whole new thing for some people. How to do your NaPTAN boundaries, not how to do boundaries. So, feedback corner. Take 5 minutes if you like. Just put in what's good and useful, what's giving you joy about these meetings, what's frustrating you, what's not good or useful, and what's making you sad, things that are missing, and things that should be happening that aren't. Also, if you've got stuff in with me, I am playing the service designer, the service owner, the product owner, and the business analyst at the moment, and doing the mailbox. And I'm also the delivery manager this week because our delivery manager is off sick. So please take a number and hold caller at some point in time. There will be a 5-minute space in which I can at least triage your call and put it into which bucket I should be looking at. And I will be attempting next week to block time to try to resolve some of these things. So yes, any questions, any comments, or we can I'll stop sharing and we can amble off 5 minutes early to lunch. Again, as always, thank you everyone for your input, your time, your passion, your thoughts on this. Yet again, we have spent 2 hours discussing the finer details of probably just 1 or 2 fields, and in fact even values in 1 or 2 fields in NaPTAN, which feels bonkers when I try to describe what I do as a day job to people. And I'm like, I obsess about a data set that's only got 400,000 records in it. And they're like, that's not even big data. And I'm like, no, but it runs every single bit of public transport in this country. It is so important, and it needs lots of love and care and attention at the moment. It's and not the rehabilitation, but the reawakening of NaPTAN. Cool.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And Tom, 220. It is it? Do you do 220? No, I'm thinking of somebody else. There's probably another person with the same surname as you.
There could be. There aren't many. I've never really come across many with my surname. But...
let me just double check. I should know these off by heart, but I still have moments of not getting it right. Yeah, East Riding of Yorkshire.
There is
it's
another
East Riding.
Tom in transport that I deal with, Tom, that he's Irish. He's works for NTI in island.
Right.
So
Well,
there
no.
are other
Yeah.
transport Paul
yeah.
Corrigan.
The Corcoran. Yeah. No. I mean, it is Irish. Yeah. I've got Irish heritage.
Mm.
No. Sorry. You're right, Dr. J. East Riding. There was an issue with some of the data we tried to upload a couple of weeks ago, wasn't there?
Yes.
And we did email about that. So
Yes.
you're right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Because I thought I was going
No, you're not.
absolutely beyond
It was no, you're
my
not. It's
normal
a
level of
220
nuts.
thing. I wasn't sure what you meant by the 220 thing, but yeah, no, you're right. I was just telling Carl about that yesterday, actually. So no, and we do
Okay,
the
so you're
Yeah.
still working on resolving the issue.
yeah. We haven't actually made any changes to the data from our point of view, have we, Carl, for East Riding for the stops for a while.
Not
So
for
it's
a while.
it's not really a problem. I think there was
Okay.
So
So, but you know what is causing the error, or is it?
I'll have to have a look. I can't actually remember, but we'll have a look.
Okay. Oh, no problems. I was more because every day we look at what's been uploaded and the team double check if there's been any errors. And when you errored a couple of times in a row, it was it then flags to the person running the mailbox to get in touch and just check what's going on and make sure that everything's okay and you don't need any help. So that's all that we were doing.
Fine.
But I just thought I'd explain that because we do honestly check every day as to what's going on and make sure that there's no one's facing error messages and just constantly falling over. Because normally somebody hits an error message and then 20 minutes later they'll upload something. They'll upload for the same ACCO code, which is how I know everything is by the numbers. They will upload the same ACCO code and it will be fine. So it's more just like, if somebody's struggling, we just like to double check.
Yeah, that happened yesterday because South Yorkshire I uploaded and there was an error. And I tried again a few minutes later and it worked fine.
Okay, cool.
So, but I mean, a lot of the time I think it's down to my connection. You know, perhaps something times out during that upload period and it doesn't upload the file properly. I don't know, but
okay. Oh, that's interesting to look at. I might ask the team to spend a little time and go in and have some looks at what is erroring out for you. But that's more we'll put that into the long backlog for the team when they've got a bit of space to go through and double check that. You also know that you can now upload 10 files at a time.
Right. Yeah. No, I wasn't aware.
So yeah, we've changed it. Changed it a couple of months back so that you can now. Used to be you could only upload 3 files, and then Andy and Tansy cried enough that we changed. We did all of the work to change the 3 to 10, which means that they've gone from having to do something 10 times to doing something 3 times, which has worked out for everybody. But it means that you, with your 5 or 6, should just be able to upload them all at once.
Yeah.
Without any issues.
It's 4 for us, isn't it, Carl? So it doesn't take much time anyway. But
York, East Riding, Hull, us, North Yorkshire might be 5, is it?
5.
Or
I don't know. It's annoying because our system's down at the minute and I can't check. It's really,
yeah, our system's broken still.
Luckily, Teams is working.
I think it's 5. I thought it was York, East Riding, North Yorkshire, or the North Yorkshire manage their own.
It's 5.
And then us, and Hull.
I was going to say I could go check, but I won't.
I can't check. It's really annoying. I can't get into anything. But it's
Okay,
either way, we could upload them on good now.
Yeah. Which just, I mean, it's saving you. It might save you a few minutes, but it also means that it's a one and done. You're not having to think, have I done them all, or have I organized them all? It's all just drop them and go. Make a coffee because it should take about 3 to 5 minutes to do maximum. As we got down to within 10% of the theoretical limit of the upload, and the first part of the check, and I'm like, guys, I don't think we need to optimize this anymore. Our team has some real speed demons on it who are really got locked into let's make sure everything is as performative as possible, everything performs well and sleek and stably, and they got really into let's let's figure out the fastest way of making these things happen. And then somebody went, what's the theoretical fastest that we could go? And then that was it. So
Cool.
Yeah. Excellent. Right. Thank you both, and catch you. I'm going to do a private beta special, which this almost was, but I'll get Tansy and a couple of the other people who are on the private beta in, just trying to organise the meeting. Not had time this week because I've just been covering so many roles. So there you go. Excellent.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you both.
Cheers.
Cheers.
No
See
worries.
you.
See you
Bye-bye.
later.
Bye.